When you first spot a title promising an expert's guide to oral intimacy, your mind conjures up the secrets of perfect technique, hidden tips from professionals who have mastered the art of pleasuring every curve and contour. You imagine diagrams of anatomy, descriptive passages in hushed tones, the slow unveiling of every nuance. What you don't expect is a story about learning to ask and listen before you dive in, a story about the courage it takes to admit, this is what really feels good, and the grace it takes to absorb someone else's needs without judgment. The irony of our tale is that real magic rarely arrives through assumption, even when you think you know best. It arrives through conversation, honesty, and the willingness to receive the truth about someone else's pleasure. Think of it this way. You're about to celebrate your birthday or Christmas. You've dropped hints for weeks to your partner, your best friend, anyone who will listen about that one gift you really want. Finally, the day arrives. Your heart races as you tear open the paper only to discover something entirely different. You force a smile, offer effusive thanks, and hang the item in your home as if it was exactly what you dreamed of. The giver beams, certain they have nailed it, while you silently wonder why nobody heard the message you thought you clearly sent. The polite exchange of gratitude keeps the peace, but inside you nurse a small disappointment and a question. Why wasn't I really heard? Our relationship, like so many others, weathered its first storms of miscommunication, not in business meetings or social gaffes, but in the bedroom. Back in our 20s, long before we embraced any religious framework, or even thought seriously about what a lifelong commitment would entail, we swam in hormones, excitement, and novelty. We believed that anything we did was a fresh thrill, kissing in back seats, surprising each other at parks, exploring our bodies in ways that would have made Victorian ancestors faint. We thought our instincts would guide us perfectly. She went down on him, he went down on her. Ecstasy followed. Rinse and repeat. Surely our mutual attraction was enough to solve all questions of technique and timing. Yet as time passed, certain motions felt less spontaneous, more rote. A particular tilt of the head, a certain pressure with the tongue, created small moments of friction. We didn't voice discomfort. We simply tried something else. But without naming the problem or identifying its source, we drifted into routines, trusting that our very closeness would somehow produce fresh revelations. We might switch positions or speed, but we never addressed the missing ingredient: clear communication about what each of us truly wanted in that moment. When I reflect on those days, I see a pattern as old as humanity itself, the dance of giving and receiving that veils our real desires. You give a gift, expecting gratitude. The recipient smiles, masking disappointment. You feel appreciated and proud. They feel unheard. In relationships, this dance often extends into intimacy, shaping sexual encounters from the first kiss to the most heated moments behind closed doors. We learn the steps early on: when to nod, when to offer a polite yes, when to laugh and change the subject. But the deepest satisfaction always waits for the moment we break that pattern and share our true needs. The turning point for us came not from studying anatomy or memorizing positions, but from one simple realization. The heart of pleasure lies in honest expression. We had to learn to speak up, to form words like slower, softer, or right there, and to pay careful attention when those words streamed back at us. Saying, "I love it when you hold my hips like that," felt vulnerable, as if admitting that without those cues, we might fumble and fail. Listening carefully felt like admitting we didn't already know everything, but in that vulnerability, we found a gateway to deeper trust. Imagine opening that birthday present you really wanted. Now imagine telling your partner, "I appreciate your effort, but this isn't quite what I had in mind. Can we talk about what I hinted at?" Dread fills your chest. What if they feel hurt? Yet the release you feel when you finally speak your truth outweighs the fear. You find out they misheard, or maybe never quite caught on, and suddenly a rich conversation unfolds. How you felt too shy to ask directly, what excites you most, and what small gestures make your pulse race. In sharing your desire, you gift your partner the chance to give exactly the pleasure you crave, and in listening to their response, you bring them into the gift of perfecting your mutual delight. We discovered that every couple carries its own language of touch, soft words mirrored by soft lips, gentle moans that guide tongues and fingers, laughter that breaks tension and invites experimentation. Without that shared language, every session risks becoming a guessing game or a confused exchange of polite mimicry. But once you build the vocabulary, through whispered cues, open questions, and patient correction, you set the stage for spontaneous yet deeply attuned intimacy. It's no longer about performing to a hidden checklist. It's a living, breathing dialogue in which each caress speaks volumes and each murmur opens doors. In those early years, we made countless missteps, rushing ahead, getting impatient when she couldn't reach climax exactly at our pace, or feeling awkward when he hesitated to reveal what truly captivated him. We apologized, backed away, and slipped back into our comfort zones. But gradually, bolstered by moments of unguarded candor, I felt so dismissed when you just changed positions. I loved it when you whispered encouragement. We began to dismantle the unspoken rules that had kept us playing it safe. Those admissions felt like small gifts to each other, wrapping new layers of trust and understanding around our union. The true gift of honest conversation, we learned, is its power to transform a good sexual relationship into an extraordinary one. Once you can say, without shame or embarrassment, "This is exactly what I need," and have your partner respond with equal openness, you discover the boundless landscape of mutual pleasure. Touch becomes a shared craft, laughter and moaning become essential guides, and the anticipation of exploring one another's whispered desires ignites fresh passion at every turn. So if the title of this piece led you here hoping for a technical manual, forgive the detour. The most profound secret we can share isn't a specialized stroke or a hidden groove. It's the courage to unwrap your truth and the grace to unwrap your partner's. Give the gift of honest communication, and watch as every touch becomes a present waiting to be unwrapped, just the way you both always wanted. Back in our early 20s, long before we ever paused to consider faith or lifelong vows, we were wrapped in the euphoria of discovery. It was the 1970s, that glorious era of liberation, when rules felt arbitrary and every hidden corner of life beckoned with promise. Passion ruled over discretion, or so we believed, so we borrowed empty classrooms, secluded park benches, even the back seats of cars just to feel the thrill of exploration. It didn't matter whether it was fresh spring grass under our bare skin or the musty carpet of a studio apartment. The novelty of our bodies in motion was intoxicating. We lived by instinct, convinced that raw desire was its own compass, and that whatever surprised us in the moment must surely be what each other needed. Yet over time, instinct proved an incomplete guide. Certain techniques or angles that once sent sparks through our nerves began to feel flat. A change of rhythm that he found electrifying one night might register as a dull thud the next morning. A particular way of stroking her with lips and hands could leave her unmoved, even though it had once sparked laughter and breathy moans. Instead of naming the problem, we'd simply shift on our own, exploring a new move, a different position, anything to recreate what we assumed she or he wanted. Without words, these adjustments were like secret signals that only one of us understood. Meanwhile, the other guessed blindly, always hoping that this time would be the magic formula. Before long, our sex life had fallen into patterns, some comfortable, some just lukewarm. We laughed about our wrestling with the sheets, joked that we'd accidentally discovered every possible position, yet in those smiles hid a touch of regret. We were doing our best, but something essential was missing. None of it was anyone's fault. We simply had not learned the most basic skill of intimacy, clear communication about pleasure. On hot summer evenings, lying tangled together in the dim glow of a street lamp filtering through our window, I recall wondering how we could redeem that initial spark. We still craved each other, still found our bodies compelling, but the map of desire had lines we hadn't yet traced. One night, exasperated by a series of near climaxes that fizzled away, she sighed, turned, and said plainly, "I wish I knew exactly what you wanted from me." In that moment, everything shifted. Rather than pretending that the old scripts would work forever, we acknowledged that those scripts had to be rewritten in real time, together. Soon we realized that mere reaction to thrust, to kiss, to hold, could never replace the deliberate exchange of needs and wants. We began by naming the obvious. "When you slow down here, it feels so good." Or, "I'd love it if you held my hand like that while I touch you." At first, it felt awkward to trade directives in the dark, too clinical, almost surgical. But every time one of us shied away from speaking up, we felt a little bump of frustration, a flicker of doubt, as though we were treading water instead of making progress. We decided that vulnerability, rather than being a weakness, was a bridge. The more clearly we described what delighted us, the more precisely the other could deliver it. Our improvised, wordless routine gave way to an ever-shifting collaborative choreography. No longer did I assume that I knew the perfect pressure against her lips or under her clitoris. Instead, I watched her breathing, listened to her moans, and most importantly, asked, "Is this right?" She, in turn, stopped expecting me to divine her pleasure from my own pleasure. With genuine curiosity, she murmured, "I want more of this," or gently redirected me if I strayed. There were nights when we laughed at how clueless we had once been. We remembered the countless times we had tumbled into new positions without so much as a question or even a whisper of consent. We chastised ourselves gently, acknowledging that our youthful recklessness had skipped the crucial step of listening. But we also celebrated how liberating that mistake had been, because it pushed us to this next stage, building a language of intimacy unique to our partnership. Over the years, we discovered that communication wasn't confined to words alone. A tender brush of fingertips along inner thighs could mean, "Keep going," while a light tug at a sheet might signal a wish for more coverage. "Soften your lips," she taught me, "when you sense she's nervous. Pick up the pace only when her body tells you she's ready." And so we translated every gasp, every heartbeat, every small gesture into a guidebook we wrote together, a living text that evolved with every new encounter. That historical context, or carefree tapestry of the 70s, proved both a blessing and a curse. The freedom to experiment without judgment fueled our courage, yet it also blinded us to the simple power of asking. We took for granted that mutual attraction alone would fill all the blanks. But as responsibilities multiplied, careers, moving apartments, friendships that demanded time, our inner willingness to speak frankly and to stay present during each encounter became the true act of rebellion. The greater gift was not in rediscovering obscure positions or clandestine locations. It was in learning to share our desires without shame, and in listening when our partner spoke theirs. In the end, we understood that the richest pleasure arises not from perfect technique, but from perfect attention. Each time we paused to ask, "Is there somewhere I'm missing?" Or, "Do you want more pressure?" We renewed an unspoken vow to honor one another's body and heart. Now, decades later, we can trace every nuance of our connection to that turning point when two people, previously content to grope in the dark, chose instead to shine the light of clear, kind communication on each other's needs. And through that choice, every touch, every whisper, every shared breath became not just an echo of our youth, but a promise renewed each time we learned something new about the other's pleasure. In our journey toward truly intimate connection, we discovered that the most powerful tool wasn't a new position or a clever technique, but the art of gentle, attuned touch guided by clear communication. For her, the focal point of sensation became what she lovingly called her pleasure button, that small, exquisitely sensitive bundle of nerve endings at the tip of her clitoris. Early on, I learned that the single-minded focus so often depicted in guidebooks can backfire. Instead, delight builds most fully when I attend to the entire landscape of her vulva and surrounding areas, weaving attention between her clit, her inner lips, her outer lips, and even the tops of her thighs and pelvis. I came to realize that the most compelling strokes and kisses were those delivered with deliberate softness or precision, and always in response to her feedback, whether in whispered instructions or the natural rhythms of her breath and moans. One evening, as she lay on her stomach with me tracing circles along her lower back, she drew in a slow breath and whispered, "Just there softer." In that moment, I adjusted my pressure, drawing my fingertip in a gentler arc around the hood, and her whole body shivered. We didn't need an hour of fumbling to find an ideal speed. Instead, she guided me like a skilled conductor, and I learned to watch for the slightest twitch of her skin, the change in her exhale, the shift of her hips. We called this our dynamic duet, a back-and-forth conversation conducted in touch and tone, where each syllable of a moan or breathless "yes there" signaled a shift in tempo or intensity. Perhaps the most thrilling discovery was the practice of edging, bringing her to the very cusp of release, and then easing off, lengthening the build and heightening the eventual climax. At first I hesitated, worried I might push too far or disappoint her. But she taught me that the drama of being just under the edge, in that deliciously suspended tension, could be far more electrifying than a simple, uninterrupted rush to orgasm. "Keep your tongue still and firm, right under the hood, and circle it slowly," she murmured once, as she shook with suppressed urgency. When I paused, she sighed and said, "Not too fast, stay here." Then, in a mutual impulse, I lifted my head slightly, leaned in for a soft kiss on her inner thigh, and she melted into that touch with a low, breathy moan that told me exactly where to return. But we learned that words as simple as softer, slower, more here, or a little lower were just as vital. She taught me that moans can guide you, but a verbal cue can prevent misinterpretation. I discovered that when she said, "Let me hear your voice," she was inviting me to respond as she responded, to murmur encouragement and affirmation in kind, reinforcing the feedback loop. In turn, I found that my own pleasure intensified in those moments of attentive service, an exchange of energy that left me as fulfilled as her. Attending to her entire pelvic region took us beyond the stereotypical focus on a single spot. I learned to begin with light kisses on her outer lips, slowly working inward, pausing to trace her inner labia with the tip of my tongue. Sometimes I'd alternate between wet, broad strokes and firmer, more pointed touches, gauging her response each time. Occasionally I'd press a finger just inside her entrance, palm up and fingers gently curved, to massage that fleshy ring of muscle at her pelvic floor while my mouth continued its gentle worship above. Those dual sensations, tongue and finger working in concert, became one of her favorite combinations. Exploration didn't end at her genitals. Soft kisses across her inner thighs, gentle brushing along the pubic mound, and even a light nibble at her hip crease could spark unexpected bursts of pleasure. We found that sometimes she needed a broader canvas of sensation to unlock the intense arousal gathering at her core. Those peripheral touches built anticipation, setting the stage for a more focused assault on her clit when the moment was perfect. Over time, I noticed how her body language shifted from initial hush to mounting anticipation. A slight arch in her back, her legs pressing inward toward my face, her hands fisting the sheets. That subtle choreography told me when to intensify, when to slow, and when to pause altogether. And in those pauses, she would sometimes say, "Hold that position," or "Move your tongue down," or simply, "Don't ever stop." Her confidence in guiding me became the greatest aphrodisiac of all, turning each encounter into a collaborative creation rather than a solo performance. On the rare occasions when I got distracted or tried to improvise too much, perhaps slipping from the spot she craved to a new angle, I would often hear a tiny sigh of frustration or feel her hands gently repositioning my head. Rather than take these moments personally, I came to treasure them as course corrections in our dance. An apology and a quick "show me again" transformed every misstep into an opportunity to learn and refine our mutual language of desire. We also discovered that combining gentle suction with light flicks of the tongue around the clitoral hood produced a roller coaster of sensation, a soft vacuum followed by a teasing gliding motion. Later, when she became more comfortable, I'd experiment with gentle pinches on her clitoral shaft, always checking in first with a whispered, "Is this okay?" Her eyes would flash eagerness, and I'd know I'd found another sweet spot. Perhaps most important of all, we recognized that this art of touch was a living, evolving practice. What thrilled her one week might feel overly familiar the next, so we never stopped communicating. Every now and then we would pause, breasts heaving, and talk about the latest revelation. "I loved how you mixed in those thigh kisses," or "Next time, try varying the pressure on the entrance just a bit." These conversations off the bed and in the quiet aftermath deepened our emotional connection and ensured our physical explorations stayed vibrant. In the end, the art of gentle touch isn't just a series of techniques, it's the commitment to give full, responsive attention to your partner's pleasure. It's the courage to ask for feedback and the humility to adjust on the fly. When you merge the sensual with the communicative soft caresses informed by honest cues, exploratory kisses grounded in real-time guidance, you unlock a realm of mutual satisfaction far more profound than any prescribed routine. Every brush of the tongue becomes a question, every moan an answer, and together you compose a symphony of touch that grows richer with each new telling. We realized that stepping beyond familiar routines required more than just curiosity. It demanded trust, mutual respect, and a shared willingness to explore uncharted territory together. After months of honing our communication skills around familiar pleasures, we felt ready to broaden our sensual map. The first step was discussing boundaries openly. We each listed fantasies or areas we had never tried, alongside any hard limits we weren't comfortable crossing. We agreed on safe words, simple, unmistakable signals to pause or stop whenever either of us felt uneasy. That framework of consent alone turned every new experiment into an adventure rooted in care rather than risk. One evening, we decided to explore anal play, a notion that had always hovered on the edge of our conversations. I made a point of researching safe practices, investing in high-quality water-based lubricant, and learning the gentle techniques recommended by health professionals. Before any physical contact, we talked through the process step by step, the importance of relaxation, the need to go slowly, and the absolute necessity of stopping if pain or discomfort arose. He reassured me that he would guide himself with my comfort as his top priority, and I promised to communicate honestly whenever something felt too intense. As we began, I lay on my side with a pillow between my knees, my breathing steady as he started with soft kisses along my lower back. He used a fingertip to trace my skin, building comfort and trust before even thinking of insertion. Watching my reactions told him to pause at every slight twitch or hesitation. When I signaled that I felt ready for the next step, he added a drop of lube, gently pressed his finger at my sphincter, and waited. At first, there was a strange sensation of pressure, but no pain. He held there patiently until I relaxed, then inched another fraction deeper. Each time he advanced only on my explicit yes, my body learned not to fear, but to explore. His other hand alternated between supporting my hip and softly squeezing my inner thigh, reminding me that pleasure could still be found in the familiar, even as we ventured into new territory. After a few cautious sessions, I found I could allow more movement and more sensation. He experimented with slow, small thrusts, always gauging my comfort level. When I was ready, he slipped a second finger inside, massaging the inner wall in gentle circles. The combination of outer stimulation from his tongue and this new inner approach created waves of sensation that felt novel and thrilling. It wasn't about pushing limits for their own sake. It was about discovering where real pleasure lived when built on trust. Similarly, he wanted me to learn more about prostate massage, a subject many men find embarrassing to raise. He appreciated that I took his hand, guiding it to research articles and tutorial videos on anatomy and technique before we tried anything. When we did begin, he lay on his side while I used a well-lubricated finger, gliding slowly to find the prostate's soft bulge. His initial nervous laughter dissolved into surprised gasps of pleasure as I began to trace gentle circles. He found that combining this internal work with external attention, caressing the base of his penis, soft kisses on his inner thigh, amplified the sensation in ways he had never experienced through conventional stimulation. Throughout these explorations, we maintained constant dialogue. A moan or a tensing of muscles could guide us, but verbal cues like "go slower," "that feels perfect," or "let's take a break," kept us synchronized. We learned that enthusiastic encouragement could bolster confidence, and a simple question, "Are you okay?" could diffuse any doubt. Each session concluded with a debrief, what we loved, what we could improve, and whether there were new ideas we wanted to test next time. Over time, exploring these new boundaries deepened not only our physical intimacy but also our emotional connection. The vulnerability required to reveal private curiosities forged an unshakable bond. Trust became not just a word but a living thread that ran through every touch and every whispered instruction. We found that the thrill of trying something new was magnified by the certainty that neither of us would ever feel pressured or ashamed. We also discovered that these expanded practices could weave seamlessly into more traditional encounters. A night of romance might begin with gentle kissing and cuddling, gradually shifting to familiar oral and manual techniques, and then, if we both felt drawn, slipping into more adventurous moves, always with a fresh reminder of our safe words and an unspoken promise to honor any hesitation. This fluid integration kept our sex life dynamic, preventing routine from dulling desire. Perhaps most surprising was how these explorations taught us about patience. In the past, we might have become impatient when a new position felt awkward or when an experiment didn't immediately produce fireworks. Now, we greeted any misstep with laughter and curiosity. Let's try that again, but with more lube, or maybe next time we start with just kisses before moving on, became common refrains. This playful attitude kept anxiety at bay and turned every session into an ongoing workshop of mutual discovery. In sharing these experiences with a circle of trusted friends, always respecting each couple's privacy, yet offering encouragement, we saw how many people hesitate to ask for what they really want. Fear of judgment or misunderstanding can stifle desire before it even sparkles. By contrast, our journey showed that clear, compassionate communication opens doors. No matter how unconventional or traditional your tastes, the principles remain the same. Speak up, listen hard, and choose respect over assumption. Expanding boundaries with trust transformed our relationship into a laboratory of pleasure and understanding. We learned that the most profound adventures often begin with a single question: would you like to try this? And that the most important answer is not always yes or no, but the honest conversation that follows. In that space of shared exploration, every new boundary crossed becomes another invitation to discover the richest landscapes of mutual satisfaction. As the years slipped by, we discovered that bodies change in ways both subtle and profound, and that the secret to sustained intimacy lies in our willingness to adapt together. In our 20s, passion often surged like an ocean tide, sweeping us away in moments of abandon that felt effortless. By our 30s and 40s, however, life's currents, careers, children, college tuition, aging parents began to pull at us, and we realized that the force of desire no longer carried us automatically from one moment to the next. Suddenly, what once happened naturally now required intention and planning. He found that reaching climax took longer, while I learned that stress could dry me out in an instant. Our responses to touch, temperature, and timing shifted with the passage of time, and the old patterns fast, urgent, leave no second unexplored sometimes felt jarring or even uncomfortable. Recognizing those changes was not a defeat, but an invitation to grow together. We began by embracing extended foreplay and focusing on what our bodies actually needed rather than what we used to do. Mornings of hurried kisses gave way to weekends dedicated to lingering caresses. We set aside a simple rule: no assumptions. Before diving in, we'd check in with one another. How are you feeling today? What would you like more of? So that we could align our pace and pressure to the moment. Over time, we discovered that a few extra spurts of water-based lubricant could transform friction into silk, and that a warmed-up bedroom, scented with candles or essential oils, could ease tension and invite relaxation. We invested in small tools, soft massage oils, body-friendly pillows to prop legs at comfortable angles, and even a gentle vibrating wand that offered a welcome alternative whenever manual or oral stimulation felt tiring. Alongside these practical aids, we cultivated emotional rituals, 5-minute check-ins over morning coffee, bedtime journaling of fantasies, and the occasional romantic getaway, so that our connection thrived on more than just physical contact. As menopause approached, I noticed that my body responded differently to touch. What used to be a soothing tease now sometimes felt too cool or brief. Instead of pressing forward, I learned to ask for gentler, sustained pressure, first on my outer vulva and then on my clitoris. I discovered that alternating between warm, damp cloths and a slightly firmer fingertip could rekindle sensations I feared lost. He, in turn, discovered that a slower rhythm allowed him to build momentum without any fear of premature ejaculation, and that intermittent breaks, during which he could stroke my thighs or kiss my neck, helped him last longer and feel more connected to me. When erectile changes crept in, we responded not with frustration, but with curiosity. We explored positions where I could take more control cowgirl, reverse cowgirl, or side-by-side lotuso that he could enjoy fullness without pressure to maintain a hard shaft throughout. We also learned to see spontaneous arousal morning wood or a private stretch on the couch as invitations to explore without expectations of a quick finish. When necessary, we considered medical advice, and he tried a prescription medication that eased his anxiety about performance without numbing sensation. I, meanwhile, turned to a gentle topical estrogen recommended by my doctor to maintain vaginal health, keeping dryness at bay without disrupting our natural rhythm. In our 50s and beyond, we embraced a kinder, softer approach to our bodies. What had once seemed like obstacles became new pathways to pleasure. A hand pressed to my lower back as I leaned forward, a careful curl of his fingers at just the right angle inside me, and a series of warm kisses across my belly, all combined in ways we had never tried in our youth. He discovered that light flicks across my nipples or the soft hollow behind my knee could spark arousal before we even touched genitals. I, in turn, learned that gentle suction on his frenulum, where the underside of the glands meets the shafts, sent him into waves of delight he hadn't felt in years. These novel combinations felt fresh and liberating, reminding us that evolution rather than repetition was the key to a satisfying sexual life. Communication remained our cornerstone. Every session began with a brief exchange, sometimes playful, sometimes tender about what we craved or what we'd like to skip today. If fatigue, aches, or medications dimmed our enthusiasm, we didn't push. Instead, we treated each other with compassion, often turning to full-body massages, sensual baths, or simple cuddling as valid forms of connection. We found that a shared smile across a candle-lit room could be as erotic as any overt act, and that the warmth of another human being against your skin sometimes ignites desire in its own right. What truly shifted over time was not just our technique, but our mindset. We moved from a culture of performance measured in climax counts and intensity peaks to a celebration of shared pleasure, where every sigh, every brush of fingertips, every whispered compliment counted as an affirmation of mutual respect and care. We learned to applaud small victories, a sustained moment of eye contact, an unexpected giggle during a tender caress, a spontaneous heartbeat, close embrace, and to weave them into the fabric of our intimacy. Now, decades into our partnership, we look back on those early days of fire and frenzy with gratitude for the lessons they taught, but we cherish even more the slow burn of a well-crafted connection. We have become experts not in any single trick, but in the enduring art of adaptation, listening to our bodies, tuning in to each other's needs, and responding with creativity and kindness. In this ever-changing dance, aging has not dimmed our passion, it has refined it. We have discovered that true sexual vitality is not about defying time, but about moving alongside it, willing to change, to learn, and always to communicate. And in that willingness, we have found the richest reward of all, a pleasure that grows deeper, more fulfilling, and more resilient with each passing year. Over the decades, we have come to see our intimate life not as a fixed destination reached once and then set aside, but as an unfolding expedition that thrives on curiosity, gratitude, and ever-renewing communication. From the exuberance of our early dating years, when passion sometimes outpaced patience, to the steady warmth of our mature partnership, our greatest discovery has been that delight deepens only when we refuse to take one another for granted. Whenever we slow down long enough to ask, "What would bring you more pleasure tonight?" Or whisper, "Is this still good for you?" we transform a routine encounter into an act of genuine caring. Because every time one of us speaks up, we invite the other to meet us in honesty and vulnerability, building trust that extends far beyond the bedroom. There have been nights when life's stresses, work deadlines, family obligations, health concerns threatened to dampen our desire. Yet by treating those moments as invitations to reconnect rather than obstacles, we found new ways to kindle intimacy. Sometimes that meant trading overt sexual play for tender full-body massages, long conversations over tea about hopes and fears, or shared laughter at memories from our honeymoon. Other times we simply held hands under the covers, savoring the silent electricity that passes through two bodies aligned in affection. In these quiet interludes, we were reminded that eroticism is as much a language of the heart as it is of the flesh. Over the years, we have also seen how our shared spiritual journey has woven itself into our sexual union. As we embrace the teachings of compassion, selflessness, and mutual service, we understood that physical pleasure is most profound when it serves the well-being of the other. The simple act of prioritizing her comfort before my own rush to climax, or pausing my enjoyment to ask if he needs more time to reach his peak, evolved into a sacred ritual of reciprocal devotion. In this way, our bedroom became a sanctuary of partnership, where far from being self-indulgent, every caress carried the promise of love poured out. Even as our bodies changed, as responsibilities multiplied, and as the world outside moved in fast, unpredictable currents, we found that the unbroken thread of open dialogue held us firm. When medications altered our libidos or a season of illness limited our energy, we leaned on the same principle that had guided our earliest exploration. Speak honestly, listen without judgment, and adapt together. No embarrassment, no hidden resentment, only the shared commitment to honor one another's needs. This commitment paid dividends not just in the quality of our sexual encounters, but in the strength of our entire marriage. We became partners in every sense, solving conflicts with grace, celebrating victories with genuine joy, and facing disappointments as a unified front. Our children grew up witnessing a model of affection, grounded in respect rather than taken for granted, and our friendships benefited when other couples asked us for guidance on how to keep the spark alive after years or even decades together. In response, we have opened our home on more than one occasion to honest conversations about fear of rejection, shyness in articulating desires, or the shame that can accompany unconventional fantasies. By sharing our own missteps, the fumbling first attempts at asking for feedback, the awkward pauses when we realized we hadn't checked in, we've shown that vulnerability can be a source of strength rather than humiliation. We remind one another, and anyone who will listen, that the greatest gift you can offer your partner is the freedom to express their deepest longings without fear. Today, whether we are celebrating an anniversary in the quiet of our bedroom, or stealing a late-night moment during a family gathering, the instinct to ask, to share, and to respond with a willing, listening heart still guides us. It is the vow we renew each time we explore a new nuance of touch, each time we adapt to another stage of life, and each time we choose to see pleasure not as an entitlement but as a shared journey. We hope that by telling our story warts and all, we embolden other couples to break the patterns of assumption and silence that stifle intimacy. May every relationship find its own language of delight. May every partner offer their truest self in giving and receiving, and may the simple courage to speak your desire become the spark that lights an enduring flame of mutual joy.